Please, if anyone have any question or any clarification, please go ahead and I'll be happy to answer it. Yes, sir.
I've talked with two Syrian refugees who've been here 1 to 3 years, one Muslim, one Christian, and both strongly surprised me when they said they and many of the people they know support Assad and they see him as the best hope for Syria. With all the negative press that Assad gets here, much of it fairly deserved, can you help us understand their thinking?
Yes, every person, as much as bad or good he is, you will find people that will talk bad things about him and good things about him. I remember, Jeanette, you worked with Martin Luther King, right? I guess he had a very bad rap back then, right? Even Gandhi had a very, Nelson Mandela had, and we know these are great people. And of course, even evil people have people that see that they will benefit from them and not. My experience, my personal experience, and what I have witnessed were not positive. And the statistics show that 95% of the people who have killed in Syria was because of government activities. The second place and will come Russia and ISIS and other opposition groups or groups that are in Syria. For me, I look at it like this. If you have a company and your company goes into ruin, who would you blame for? Isn't it the CEO? He is the president. He's been the president for 11 years. His father was the president for 40 years. And we say he's didn't do anything wrong. I think that's a very weird narrative that I'm hearing. But I understand some people because some people have lived a better life under that and they don't want to go on to politics. In all these dictatorships, if you don't talk, if you don't do anything, that's just work and don't talk, you won't be in trouble. So some people have these opinions and I understand them. But the reality is different and the documentation is different and what a lot of world organization have seen is different. And what I have witnessed is different. And believe me, I didn't go because I had hardships. Actually, I was very privileged under the Assad government. I didn't have an economic problem with him. But the problem was that I didn't feel that killing your own citizens is justified in any way, shape, or form. And I can understand anyone who would hate war and disagree with war. I understand you. But I don't understand anyone that would hate war and at the same time support someone who does war and who did war and he was the reason for a lot of killing. So that's my personal view. But of course, people could have a different opinion. Yes.
This was a wonderful introduction for us and a wonderful view of things. I wanted to share, there's a movie called Salam Neighbor.
Yes.
And it is two American young men who got permission to go into the refugee camp in Jordan, the one with the Champs-Élysées. It's about an hour-and-a-half documentary, and it is available on Netflix. I don't work for Netflix. I just want you to know where to find it. But it is just more information and more introduction and more, as she said, when we know someone, the fear goes away. And it's a wonderful introduction to know some more of these people and to see what they go through to be vetted.
Exactly. It's a wonderful. I actually was on a panel with the producer of this movie. This is why at Michigan State. So this is why I know personally. It's a wonderful. It's a wonderful movie. It gives the experience of two. It's a project actually. These two young folks do. They did it, I think, in Central America, lived with the indigenous people of Central America for a period of time, and did the same thing in the Zaatari camp in Jordan, where they lived, I think, for 3 months over there, so they could feel the experience of refugee. What is it to be a refugee and how's the life? And you can see how tough it is to be a refugee in a refugee camp. Yes, sir.
evident that this country right now is deeply divided, and that there are a lot of issues. And recently, the president attempted a 90-day ban to restrict half a dozen countries, anybody coming into this country. Given the deep divide and your experience of being here in the country, if you were the president today, what would you do?
Okay, interesting question. I don't think I'm going to be the president soon, but anyway. But so the executive order has different elements. One is a pause on the resettlement process, general resettlement to everyone for 120 days. That actually will affect about 60,000 refugees, people who have been processed and vetted, and they will have to start all over again. Second element is to ban Syrian refugees indefinitely. So no more Syrian refugees. It's not like re-evaluating the vetting process or what we have to do, evaluate the rest. Totally, that's it. We don't want them anymore. Sir, there is this 90-day pause on entry of people from 7 mainly Muslim countries to the United States. Of course, as we've seen in the several weeks, that affected students who are studying in colleges around. I was surprised the other day even to find we had a guest speaker from Syria actually doing a tour here for a fundraising, and when he wanted to leave, he couldn't leave the U.S. And we told him why he wants to leave. He doesn't want to go in because, well, the system doesn't accept him. You can't put him on the airplane system. So it's not only they didn't permit people to come in, they couldn't leave. And of course, we had an issue with permanent residents. Permanent residents were denied even entry, and that's folks that live here, that have a legal status and actually are paying taxes and working here. That's where they are. That's their home. And what happened on White Coal? What happened to this guy? He said, well, I talked to the U.S. Airways agent, and he was very frustrated at that because not only of that, he said they had pilots from these 7 countries, and they couldn't board the planes and get here. I told him, really? There's pilots work? And I said, yeah, apparently there is, because this guy was angry. He's telling me, not only your guy, I can't put him to leave, but I can't have pilots to get here to the United States to get, pilot these planes. So there was a lot of disruption. So if I was the president, and I wanted the security of the country, and I wanted not to harm the country economically, I would come into office. I will gather my security chiefs, including, all, Homeland Security, CIA, the defense, and I will consult with Congress, and I will see the best way to strike a balance, to keep our country safe, and at the same time, keep this process going. This, unfortunately, didn't happen. Because we have a divided country, and because we are looking for some type of a fast reaction, we shoot and then we aim. That's the problem. Because at the end of the day, we're hurting ourselves. I'm not against re-evaluating the vetting process. I'm for it. I'm not against controlling the borders. I'm for it. I want to know who comes in. But I want to do it in a smart way. And I want to consult with the people who have the experience, who have been working in this field for decades, and know what's wrong, people on the field, people who know their realities, people who know even foreign policy and what's effect does it have on our image, our war to confront these terrorists overseas. And then I will come with an executive order, or probably better, a law, like the previous administration did in regards to identifying these 7 countries because there was unrest, and having this loophole where people who could come from countries in Europe, there is a waiver system that you come into the United States without applying for a visa, and they asked everyone who had been to Syria or to Iraq or Somalia to apply for a visa so they would know who's coming in. They didn't ban them, but they said, we just need to know who you are. And we understood this. Everyone understood this. So that's it. That's what I would do. I will strike a balance, ask the experts, do a more considerate study, and then I will do either an executive order or a legislation, better one. I hope I answered your question. Yes.
How can we answer people who want to say, well, look what's happening in Europe?
This is what I try to answer to make the difference between the asylum system and the resettlement system. So in Europe, what's happening? First of all, you have two elements. In Europe, you have a problem in certain countries. I want to identify them specifically. Belgium and France. You have a problem of integration, alienation of a segment of their population, especially young Muslim population, where they feel alienated, they don't belong to this country. This is actually where you had the Paris attacks coming from this population. They weren't refugees. They were born there, they lived there. You know, so there is a problem that these countries have to face and find a solution for it. But that's different. In the United States, no one comes here and go across the borders like this, especially not Syrians. Of course, you might see the thing along the Mexican borders, but that's not Syrian. That's not people from the Middle East. They don't come this way because we have two great oceans on our two sides. No one can, in Greece, they needed half an hour to get to Greece. If you want to take a boat to come here, if you ever to come here. So it's not the same system to come here. So it's not the same system. Here we have this vetting system that takes to 2 years, that we vet people, we know who they are, and then they come here after 2 years. And the facts support it. We didn't have such an incident from them. Even San Bernardino, even Orlando, both of them were born in the United States. How would you have stopped these incidents if you had this executive order back then? Would you have stopped it? No. They will still happen because we are fighting an idea. And how do we fight an idea? That's the important thing that I always try to sell. It's an idea that we are fighting, and this is how we need to be very smart in how we do this process in fighting these extremists. I'll come to you. Yes, sir.
Your pattern for migration showed folks sort of in a western direction. Is there any movement in any other countries going east?
That's very interesting. Actually, no, not a lot. There's south, and they go to neighboring countries because... Oh, no, not... some people will go to Saudi Arabia, but, most of refugees goes because of prosecution, because there's something prosecuting them. So if you're a refugee and prosecuted, where would you go? Would you go to a place that have freedoms, or would you go to that place that had oppression, like the country you fled from? This is why you won't see a lot of people going, for instance, Saudi Arabia or Iran or Russia. People want to go where there's freedom, where they can enjoy freedoms. That's where people want to go to. This is why they go to Western Europe. They will go to the US. They will go to Canada, places that they aspire and they think this is what they dreamed of becoming in their country. So that's the reason, and actually, the response of some of these countries weren't that at all good. But there is no such things in the world as Muslim solidarity or an Arabic solidarity, by the way. That's a myth. Somehow we all Muslims stick together. No, I don't think all Christians stick together or all Jews stick together. People sometimes look at their interests, and that's not an important factor.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I was wondering if you or anybody else in the room knew, because I certainly don't know, why do you think the president chose a 90-day ban?
About the visas?
Yeah.
Well, I really don't know. I think because it's... Look, I think... Let me guess here. It's my guessing. I'm guessing. I think that somehow because of the campaign rhetoric and what's happening, and because at the end of the day, a politician, needs the approval of his voters. And it was one of probably of the signature things of the president that he wanted to, his signature was ban all Muslims coming into the United States until we figure what the hell is going on, right? Well, it didn't happen, and it's not going to happen. He made a promise that he can't keep. It's like building the wall, make Mexico pay for it. Probably there would be a wall, but it's not Mexico who's going to pay for it. And this is the same thing with the Muslim ban, because you're talking about 1.6 billion people. And you're talking about countries that, you ban Muslims, for instance. Like I mentioned, 7% of the French population are Muslims. So what are you going to do? You ban France, you ban England, you ban all the world because they have Muslim citizens. And what are you going to do with your Muslim population? So really, it wasn't enforceable. So what do? We create this chaos, we create this executive order where somehow our voters will think, he's keeping his word. But in reality, he didn't keep his word because he didn't ban Muslims. He banned only 7 countries. That's only 10% of the Muslim. So it's really, I see a lot of these things are more of a show than a real concern for security, because now there was the notion that I had to do it very fast because some bad people might come in. Well, the court stopped it, and these bad people came in. For 10 days now, people are been getting in. So if you were concerned about this, wouldn't you have done an executive order, a new executive order, or done it better from the first place? So really I don't understand the rationale behind it, but I think it's all politics, it's all show more than real concern about security. And I don't know, I wish I was wrong. Believe me, look, a lot of people I know probably in this community, but I really wish the president to be successful, because if he is not successful, we all lose. And I don't want him to do wrong steps, but I know, it's for him and people around him to understand that every step, every decision they make affects a lot of people and will affect the whole world. So they need to be very careful with this. It's serious business. And it has affected and created chaos and created very, very bad reputation for the United States around the world. And I didn't see any benefits coming out of it. So this is why I'm perplexed. And this is why I think the only reason is some kind of somehow showing my voters that I try to implement what I promised you, but it's not really what I've promised you, but it didn't work. Not because of me, I didn't want it. It's because these bad judges didn't see that it's constitutional. So that's the reason. Hope I understand. Yeah, yes?
You spoke about the countries that are accepting immigrants, refugees. Some countries you haven't mentioned at all, Japan, Argentina, South America. Is there any involvement there?
Not really that much. Tradition, it's really ironic you mentioned it. I don't know why. You know how many Syrians have actually immigrated to South America? There's a very large community. For instance, the president of Argentina, Carlos Menem, is of Syrian descent. The president of Ecuador was of Syrian descent, or Lebanese descent, because Syria and Lebanon were one country at the time. So actually you have a very large community. I know some people have went to South America and they were let in, but there wasn't such a resettlement process going on to South America or either to Asia. Mainly it was Europe, mainly, but that's understandable because it's close and because Syrians traditionally used to have more trade of Europe and more relations. So this is why they would have relatives, they would have someone that they know. This is why Europe was the main target. Even the United States wasn't such an interest for a lot of Syrians to come to. Only people who had relatives. This is my case. I have, family members here. My sister had been living in Michigan for 30 years and my brother for 20 years. So this is why I came to Michigan, because I have family. I don't know. Oh, yes.
One of the problems that we have, and you have too, is you're preaching to the choir. What do you do about that? How can you get to the people that you really want to get to, whose minds you have to affect?
Yeah, I know that's a big problem, and I always tell it to my colleagues who, some of them are very liberal, so they don't want to hear anything that they are more extreme than I am. And I said that this is the problem that we're facing in the United States. We have two bubbles. People are living like in the two coasts. They're living in their bubble, and people in the middle living in their bubble. And that's why we are where we are. We don't talk to each other. We don't want to understand each other's problem. And I'm not saying that you can reach everyone, but can I go back to something that I missed?
Yep.
Up, please.
This way?
Yes. Yeah, here. That's something that I didn't address, but go back to your question. So this poll was conducted in the UK, and the UK has a very similar attitude like the United States. They are an island. They feel independent all the time. They have their own policy. So what happened is they found this very interesting result, that 25% of the population were anti-immigrants. They don't want anyone that doesn't resemble them, either in race or in religion. If he doesn't drink like me, I don't want him. Get away from here. I don't like you. And they found 25% that people are welcoming to anyone. They're open. I don't fear anyone. Anyone can come. He's not going to be a risk for me. And then they found that 50% of the population is what is called the anxious middle. That's mainly people who don't know what's good. So should we be compassionate? Should we allow people in? Shouldn't we allow people in? What should we do? And I think that in the United States it's very similar. So if you look at the population here, I think 50% of it is in the middle. They don't know what to do, what's good, what's bad. So actually that's, I think, the target group that we have to reach for. But the problem is you have to go to it and talk to it. And that's a very huge problem, especially in regards to Syrian refugees. Because I can tell you there is not a lot of people who have went what I have went through. Like living in Syria, then going and working with refugees. And at the same time, not afraid to come up and speak. Because if you go to most of the refugees now and tell them, well, would you go out speak? He said, well, I don't want to be targeted by any group or any administration because I may say something against it. So people are afraid, and they have the right to be afraid, because refugees, when they come here, they don't become permanent residents immediately. They have to wait a year. They have to stay with their resettlement agency, and they have to stay where they are, and they had to know where they are until they get their green card. So really they're in a dilemma now, and they are very afraid. And recently we started seeing people trying to flee into Canada. Now there is reports, and there's people, refugees, who have came to the United States and are going illegally from North Dakota trying to make it to Quebec. Imagine, we are in a day and age that people are fleeing the United States and going and asking for refugee status in Canada. They're walking through snow, and that's what's going on. So I understand you. It's very, very, very tough. But what I'd like to do is always go to communities that really are not very much approval of refugees and try to have a discussion. I don't know how sometimes people show up, and sometimes we change minds and hearts, and sometimes it's not. But it's really not only my role. It's you, all of you, because I guess a lot of your family members doesn't agree what you think. And this is what we were having in the last election. We were having discussions and heated discussions and shouting on the dinner table about, and even some family members were upset with others. So what I would suggest is talk to your family members. Go on social media, discuss with other friends that you have have different opinion, and have a discussion, and let's come to a consensus and to see what's right for us and what's wrong. So for me, it's not only to reaching out to them, but to try to convince you that you reach out to your friends that you know disagree what you believe in. So I hope you can help me with that.
I think we'll have two more questions. Two more questions, yeah.
I am the spouse of a social studies teacher who is very involved in the community and lots of ethnic type things. And none of this became personal to me, and I think this might address your question as well, until we actually visited the home of a Syrian refugee family. I was so struck by how much more like them we are and vice versa than different. They're just people. And I was amazed by what this family willingly gave up. He was an OBGYN. She was a pharmacist. 3 children, I believe, 2 adult children. The middle school student was set first and lived here for 3 years before a sister came over. Then the mother came, and the dad was not allowed to leave because he was a physician. He had been kidnapped, beaten, robbed. His clinic had been bombed. They were afraid that their daughters were going to be raped. They would not allow them to go out to school. So they were living in fear their entire lives. And yet, they willingly left all of that, literally in the pursuit of happiness. So now, he cannot practice. They were going to, I don't know what number of interview it was, last week in Chicago. And then the irony of all of that, I just thought, this is just ludicrous. They had to find their own transportation. And then on top of that, they were told, and you have to bring your own translator, and it cannot be a family member or a friend. That was just a slap in the face.
Well, actually, you're telling a story of what we, actually, if you go to our website, that's the things that we ask people to do, to volunteer to help such refugees. In these instances, like translating, like teaching them English. And one other thing that I was stunned by, but I knew it, but I didn't know in Michigan City that you had a problem with physicians. Not a lot of physicians you have here. And the irony, you have thousands of Syrian physicians that are refugees. And they are very qualified people. The only problem they have is they have to do their tests for the diploma to be recognized here in the United States. And this is one of the programs we were talking about and suggesting that if the US government will, and we were actually advocating for such a program, to bring physicians, and because for them to come here and do their test, they have to serve in a community that have a lack of physicians, for instance, for 5 years. Because there's a lot of such communities across the United States. And actually, these communities are the ones that really don't want to have Syrian refugees. But actually, if they see a physician, and we already have thousands and thousands of Syrian physicians around the country, and probably they have one, but they don't know that he's Syrian. But so that's one of these ways to have this tension decrease and help the community. And that's one of programs that we can be smart about it, help benefit our own local communities, and at the same time help refugees that are in a desperate situation. So thank you for sharing this. This is very important.
One more question.
You said that you guaranteed 100% that there was not a risk for bringing in the refugees, that the vetting process was so that you guaranteed 100% there wasn't a risk. But how do you explain James Comey, the director of the FBI, as he stated that there was no way of properly vetting refugees? And I've got more on it. He said if someone has never made a ripple in the pond in Syria in a way that would get their identity or their interests reflected in our database, we can query on our database until the cows come home, but we are not going to. There will be there will be nothing showing up because we have no record on that person.
Yeah. Yeah, if he has no records on it in the FBI database, he can't know. But that's not the only way you can vet someone. You know, there's a lot of procedures that you can vet someone. So if you have a criminal, you may not have physical evidence, but if you interrogate him, you can get a confession. So it's not that, and by the way, 80% of the refugees are women and children. Only 2% of the people who have come here into the United States through the settlement project are men of fighting age. And there is a lot of process that goes on through the vetting systems through other agencies, not only the FBI, that vet them. So yes, technically, yes, he is right. But let me ask you this question. What is a refugee? A refugee is a person who fled the prosecution of his own government, right? So what he is saying, if we ask their government, they would give us the right information, the people who are fleeing from their government. Let me give you another example. How would you vet someone coming from the Democratic Republic of Congo? You can't. How would you vet? The only instance that we had such extensive database was in Iraq. Why? Because the US controlled, it was an invasion, it was an occupation, we had all the data. But actually all other countries, we have to cooperate with we can't cooperate. If someone is fleeing North Korea, a defector, will the North Korean authority will give the FBI the right information? If someone is fleeing Russia, would the Russian authority give the right information to the FBI? If someone is fleeing Cuba or someone is fleeing China? So of course the countries are not going to cooperate because they have forced these people to flee. So that's, on the face of it, it's the correct statement. But that has been happening for all along. And what we are talking about is data. There is no data to show that these refugees has committed such acts. And this is what we are talking about.
But we are engaged in a proxy war with Syria to where we are helping, we support the Syrian rebels, right? There's no good way to distinguish between the Syrian rebels and ISIS, and we support them, so we are supporting tearing apart the Syrian countries, just like that gentleman said, that that people will support Assad. So what's to say these people don't come over here and be pissed that we are helping to fund the Syrian rebels or ISIS? If somebody came to my homeland and they had refugee, or I was supposed to be a refugee somewhere, and I knew their government was funding killing Americans, I would be angry. So how do we not expect that from them?
Okay, let me tell you. First of all, you had a lot of ifs. Second of all, I will tell you how you won't get through. Because you will fail in the vetting process because you're too angry. That's what's going to happen, because they're going to question you. They're going to go your background. They're going to go what's happening. This is what I've been trying to tell you all along.
People are good liars. What about Takia? I know about Takia.
Yes.
I mean, our government is failing at vetting ourselves. We have a bigger issue with our
Exactly. So why would we worry that it's going to work?
We have less danger with people coming in than we do with our government.
I'm all about being inclusive, but look at we're at a pivotal point in America's history. We got so many people, we got our own citizens. Are we at the best?
Wait a minute, wouldn't it make more sense to ban the United States troops from...
Excuse me. Guys, thank you for interfering and thank you for your question. I understand you, but thank you for your question. I'm trying to answer you. And I really appreciate you coming here and listening and trying to have a discussion. No, I'm for it, but I'm trying to answer you. I'm trying to answer your question. And I know what you mean about Takia, but you're getting a lot of ifs. This is what I'm trying to tell you. This is a lot of ifs. Now, we have data that is going on. And of course, there is always risk. There is a risk, but the risk, what's risk management? You have more probability of being killed by a toddler than being killed by a refugee coming into this country. What does that mean? That we shouldn't have babies or we shouldn't have kids? You can be killed by a traffic accident, but the probability of being killed by a refugee holding a refugee, I told you, it's 1 in 3.6 billion. You can have your beliefs, and you can think that whatever, I don't want them, and there will be danger and going to kill me. But the statistics and the data doesn't show that. And I will agree with you if you show me such data. Tell me the data that shows that refugees that are coming through the resettlement program are a dangerous segment of the population. No, the resettlement program has been going on for a long time. And I gave you after 9/11. And actually this executive order, what does it do? 9/11, who did 9/11? Saudi Arabia, 15. United Arab Emirates, Iraq, not Iraq, Lebanon and Egypt. 1 from each and 2 from, they're not there. They're not there. The people who did San Bernardino and Orlando, they were born here. The fiancée came on a fiancée visa. She's originally from Pakistan. So make us more secure. I understand your fears. I understand you need to screen them, but you didn't do anything with this. Let's be smart about it. Let's find the real mechanism if we think there's a problem, and let's fix it.
We have one more question.
Yes.
One more. Someone else can.
Just a quick statement.
Excuse me?
A quick statement. In the first place, everyone sitting in this room is a refugee. Unless you're a Native American, you are a refugee.
Or an African American, actually. They weren't refugees.
Over 80% of all the things that have happened in terrorism in this country are Black people. That's the number, 80% of people in this country. I'm not sure if we vetted everyone in this room for 24 months that we all would be allowed to stay in all of the people incarcerated in the world are incarcerated here in the United States. You know, so in some ways, it's like you walking through a door and then slamming the door behind you so other people can't.
And just to elaborate on this, it's not Syrians. You know, it happened, I can mention the St. Louis and it happened to Jews when they came here. They were not allowed here because they were considered Nazis, collaborators, or communists. The same thing happened to other segments of the population. Cubans. There are statistics that shows 80% of the American public didn't want to resettle Cubans here. Hungarians, when they fled after the crackdown by the Soviets, they didn't want to accept, and 60% didn't want to accept resettled. The only population that, I don't know why, this anomaly, that the 30% only opposed Albanians from Kosovo. And they are Muslims, by the way. And I don't know why but if you go back in history, even before the Second World, you have an issue with the Italians, considered mobsters, or the Irish, or a lot of these religious groups that we have here have fled Europe because of prosecution of their faith and religion. The only thing that is different now, that people who are being prosecuted now are not from Europe, because Europe have freedom. So people who are prosecuted are from different areas, either Asia or Africa or South America. That's the only difference. But it's the same principle. They have been prosecuted. This is why they're trying to make it here. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.